Прошу любить и жаловать продюсера фильма «Титаник» Джона Ландау. Продюсера, соавтора сценария, режиссера монтажа и режиссера-постановщика фильма «Титаник» Джеймса Кэмерона.
Спасибо.
Они люди, друзья и просто золотые ребята. Пожалуйста, задавайте вопросы, у нас мало времени. Да.
Добрый день. Денис Данилов, The Hollywood Reporter, Russian Edition. Вопрос у меня к Джеймсу Кэмерону. Вы известны не только как режиссер, но и как пионер технологий. Вы, в частности, приверженец цифровой съемки. Как вы считаете, скоро ли наступит тот момент, когда цифра вытеснит пленку из массового кинопроизводства, когда пленка станет уже таким уделом синефилов, что ли?
So, Denise, you're talking about film, like actual photochemical film. Yeah. Well, look, I've been shooting on using digital cameras for. Excuse me that I have to answer in English. I'm sorry. I've been shooting with digital cameras since really since Titanic. So starting in 1998, I started working with digital cameras. I literally have not touched film since then. So my personal belief is that eventually film will go away, but the ideas of lighting and composition and photography and everything else are not ever going to go away. Those are basic principles of cinematic art. So, you know, even though we may do something like on Avatar, where we don't even use a camera at all, where we do performance capture, virtual capture of the actors, and create the scenes using computer simulation, even then, the basic fundamentals of lighting, composition, depth, performance of the actors, all the basic principles of cinema will always apply, no matter how the technology changes.
I would also like to just point out that the last 3 movies to win the Academy Award for Best Cinematography were all shot digitally.
That's right. Yeah. Hugo and before that, Avatar and
Network Solution.
That's right. Yeah. All digital films.
Следующий вопрос, пожалуйста.
Здравствуйте, Лариса Малякова, «Новая газета». Ваш герой Брукловет сказал, что говорит в фильме, что он так и не смог за все эти годы понять, почувствовать, избавиться от «Титаника». Мистер Кэмерон, сумели ли вы за все эти долгие годы понять, почувствовать, избавиться от «Титаника»? И если бы вы сегодня снимали эту картину, в чем существенно, не по 3D, в чем существенно она могла бы быть другой? И могла бы быть в чем-то другой?
Well, I think that's two questions. No, I've never tried to distance myself from Titanic. I love the subject matter. I've spent a lot of time exploring the ship itself. I love the film, the outcome of the film. You know, for the entire team, I was so proud of the music and the cinematography, everything that everybody brought to that film. So it was certainly one of the proudest moments of my life as an artist. But certainly I've also been just fascinated by the story of Titanic for so long because it's such a rich and detailed and complex subject. I went back to the wreck on 2 subsequent expeditions. I've made a total of 33 dives to the wreck. So Titanic has been really a big part of my life. And we planned on doing the conversion to 3D. You know, I think in 2004 we started doing tests. 2005 we announced that we were going to do it. And it's really just taken this long to do it and complete it and to do it right. And I'm sorry, there was a second part to your question. Can you just refresh my memory?
Вторую половинку вопроса повторите.
Yeah, sorry.
Если бы вы сегодня снимали «Титаник»,
right,
были бы
exactly.
какие-то перемены?
Yeah. Thanks. Well, if I were shooting Titanic today, I'd be shooting it in 3D. I'd be using digital cameras, Denise. You know, because I have a company called CPG, Cameron Pace Group. We develop new 3D and digital camera technology, We supply it to other filmmakers. For example, Martin Scorsese's Hugo was shot with our cameras, and we do big sporting events and things like that. So I would absolutely be using those camera systems. And our conversion of Titanic to 3D was quite a challenge, because I believe that we had to live up to a standard of depth as if the movie had been shot in 3D. But of course, that's a standard that can never be 100% met. I think we did maybe 98%.
But Jim, I also want to point out that we actually spent more time converting it than we spent in live action filming.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, John makes a very interesting point, that we spent 60 weeks converting the film to 3D, and $18 million with 300 artists working every day. It's a very, very time-consuming and labor-intensive task to do it. And it really only makes sense to do it for films that have already proven to be very commercially successful in the marketplace. Shooting in 3D is much easier than converting from 2D to 3D. And that's why I don't understand films that are made in 2D and converted to 3D when you have a choice. You know, if you were starting a movie today, you'd want to shoot it in 3D. You wouldn't want to shoot it in 2D and then convert it. But some people are doing that.
Да, пожалуйста.
Евгения Сморогина, радио Бизнес ФМ. Скажите, пожалуйста, на какие сборы вы рассчитываете? И рассчитываете ли вы за счет ререлиза вывести «Титаник» снова на первое место и сделать его самым кассовым за всю историю?
Well, I don't know about that. We'd have to beat Avatar, wouldn't we? That's a pretty high bar. Evgenia, I think you know, we don't like to set a goal in mind. You know, at this point, really, we're doing this really for the fans of the movie, to give a chance to go back to the cinemas. For me, it's something that doesn't happen to a filmmaker. You make a movie, it goes to the cinemas, and then it goes through the rest of its life cycle, which is all home video. And people never get to go back and see it on the big screen again. But Titanic was a movie that was made for the big screen. It's an epic film, so to me the opportunity here is to get it back into theaters. And if it's only just for a small group of fans of the movie, as long as it makes $18 million, I'm happy, because then it paid for itself. You see what I mean? But if it should make more, that's fine too, because the money is not the end goal. The money is a measure of how many people are going to the film and seeing it, and that the film is communicating to. And let's face it, as a filmmaker, you're an artist. You want to communicate to as many people as possible.
Добрый день, Сонма Картмян, СТС. У меня вопрос и к Джеймсу Кэмерону, и к Джону Ландау. Скажите, пожалуйста, вот 3D-технологии становятся все более популярными, с каждым годом они совершенствуются. А что вы знаете о первых 3D-технологиях, и видели ли вы фильмы первые, снятые в 3D? Спасибо.
Well, I think, you know, I've seen some of the movies from the 1950s. I don't think they were the original 3D movies. But the difference today is digital technology. You could not shoot your movies in the same way you shoot a 2D movie and a 3D film until digital technology came around. And now the in-cinema experience, where you can project 3D movies through digital projection and not anaglyph red and blue glasses, that's why you have a high quality and you can do movies that engage the audience more in your narrative storytelling.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fundamental. You know, when photography was first invented back in the mid-1800s, you know, over whatever that is, 160 years ago, one of the first things they did was put two cameras side by side and duplicate human vision, because they understood, even in those earliest days of photography, that what they were trying to do is they were trying to duplicate how we saw the world. But the technology never was adequate. And then in the early days of cinema, even in the 1920s, there were experiments in trying to create stereoscopic filmmaking, but it was too difficult with two cameras and two film projectors and trying to keep it synchronized. And so then there was a brief resurgence in the 1950s, and 3D came back, and people loved the illusion, but it was never practical in the daily application. The quality was never there in the cinemas. The film would break, it would get out of sync, and it would become unwatchable. So it really wasn't until the new 3D renaissance in the last 3, 4, 5 years where we have very, very good digital projection that only involves one projector and new digital cameras and so on. So that's why I believe that this 3D renaissance is here to stay. It's not a fad, it's not something that's going to come and then go away again. It's just going to continue to build. Because what we're finally able to do is to duplicate the way we see the world in our art and in our entertainment. As we're here in 3D right now, all of us, or I would say most of us. There's a small percentage of people that can't see 3D, but most of us do. That's the way we see the world, the way we perceive it from the time that we're babies. And so it's natural that we incorporate it into our art and our entertainment.
And Jim, I think this is an opportunity to talk about what 3D does, that it's not about the action scenes, it's really about the drama and the emotion of a film.
Well, I think that's an interesting point, which is that, for example, Titanic, very little happens in the first 2 hours. It's kind of an interesting film if you study it. Most movies are about 2 hours long. You get to the 2-hour mark in Titanic, the ship hasn't even hit the iceberg yet. You know, it's just people talking, it's a guy holding a girl's hand, he draws her picture, you know, falling in love, you know, it's a drama. And then it turns into an action and suspense story, still very powerful emotionally, but so what's happening for that first 2 hours? It's just human interaction. It's just an intimate story of a relationship developing. Well, when I see the film in 3D now, I see how the 3D puts me right there with those characters. And I feel the emotions more strongly as a result of that. So I think that what people are going to find out is that 3D really enhances everything. Sure, it makes live sports better. Sure, it makes action movies and science fiction movies better and spectacular films. But it also really enhances intimate human drama and interaction, which is really, I think, the surprise. I think, for me, that's the big surprise of converting Titanic to 3D, is how much more you feel when you watch the film.
Джон, прежде всего вас приветствую в Москве. Вопрос, наверное, первый к вам обоим. Вы вот в своем интервью, во многих интервью неоднократно говорили, что «Титаник» приурочен к столетней годовщине гибели лайнера. Вот, скажите, пожалуйста, все-таки другие фильмы, они к этой дате не приурочивают ни к чему, никаких официальных поводов не дают, но тем не менее их фильмы выходят в 3D-формате. «Большой Лебовский», «Лицо со шрамом». Как вы думаете вообще, с чем связана вот эта тенденция и что эти фильмы хотят вообще? Второе рождение, что это вообще такое? И второй вопрос непосредственно вам, Джеймс. Вы вот уже сказали про погружение в Марианскую впадину. Что в дальнейшем можно от вас ждать? Какие свершения? Может быть, прыжок с парашютом или вы прокатитесь на гоночном болиде Формулы-1? Спасибо.
Тем более глубже впадин уже нету.
That's right. You want to talk about the 100th anniversary?
Well, I think it was important for us to tie it to the centenary of the sinking so that we could pay tribute to all the people who tragically lost their lives that night. And also to look at the events that led up to the tragedy, the human hubris that was involved, to use that as a reminder as we are on the dawn of a new century still, and not to fall into those same pitfalls. There are lessons to be learned, and we thought this was an opportunity to tie those things together.
Right. You mentioned something, you used an interesting phrase, which was the second birth. And I was actually saying something very similar in an interview earlier, that what we have here is an opportunity for a film to be reborn, but not altered, which I think is significant. If you think about it, the 3D adds an extra dimension of enjoyment and it creates more visual power, but we never change one frame of the movie. So we're not messing around with the film or revising it or creating a kind of strange shifting ground where people have to ask later, okay, which version of the film is the real Titanic? Because we didn't change a frame of the film. We remastered it digitally. We went to 4K, increased resolution, remove the grain, the noise from the image, improve the color, and so on. But these are all small, subtle improvements in a way to create like the kind of final reference version of the movie. And converting it to 3D doesn't change any of those artistic considerations. And because I'm involved in it as the filmmaker, I can say that the 3D represents what I would have done at that time if I had 3D cameras available and if 3D projectors were available for us to market the film. Because that's what I've been pushing toward really for the last decade, is this new form of cinema. So I think it's an interesting way to give a film a rebirth, to bring it back to cinemas, which is something that doesn't happen. You know, as a director, there's no greater pleasure than to have your movie watched in a cinema. I don't want people watching my movie on an iPhone. I'm sorry. You know, if you want to watch on an iPhone, it's certainly your right to do so. But you know, what I love is the idea of sitting in that big dark room with a bunch of strangers, going on a journey together on the big screen where it just takes over all your senses. It takes over all your focus and your consciousness. And that doesn't happen these days. We're constantly more and more distracted by cell phones and BlackBerries and connectivity and multitasking and doing 3 or 4 things at once. And when you watch a film on video, you stop it, you pause it, you text, you go make a sandwich, you go get a beer. You know, so many other things are going on that you're skimming over the top of the experience of watching the film. When you go to a cinema, you know, you can't do all those things. So you become very focused, and the film acts on you emotionally and psychologically in a much deeper way. And people know this, and they choose to do it, but they choose carefully. They'll choose a film that they have a very strong belief beforehand is going to be an experience that's worth it. Now they have to hear it from a friend, or they have to hear enough good reviews of the movie, or it has to be a sequel. You know, if it's the new Batman film and you love the first ones, then you're going to love this one, so you'll make that investment to go to a theater. And Titanic fits very squarely in that because people know the film, and so they know what the experience is going to be, and they'll make that deal with themselves to go and spend that 3 hours. And that's why I think that it's a completely valid experiment to bring Titanic back to cinemas, and it's a special pleasure for me to do it as a director, to bring a film that's been gone for 15 years back into the movie theaters. Now, you asked me also what next beyond the deep dives, and you mentioned skydiving and Formula One, and so the connection there is thrill-seeking, adrenaline, but that's not what for me, the deep dive is not about adrenaline. I'm not saying that there wasn't some adrenaline, you know, but it wasn't about that. You know, to me, it's not about taking risk for risk's sake, skydiving, jumping out of an airplane. You're not discovering anything new. You're not going anyplace new. You're not adding to science or to our understanding of the natural world, or even kind of expanding yourself, you know, mentally or spiritually in any way. You're just taking a risk. And to me, that's not worth it. I've got 5 kids. I'm a family man. I'm not going to take a risk just for the sake of taking a risk. I will take risks in a very calculated way to do something that I consider to be important. And I consider research and exploration to be very, very important things. So, you know, I may have gone down one time to the depth of the Challenger Deep, but the thing that we're trying to show is that we need to explore these frontiers. I could dive 1,000 times and still be finding something new. And so, you know, I'll go back and I'll continue this, and I'm going to try to continue to encourage people to do exploration, whether it's in space, whether it's in the sciences in general, maybe genetic research, or whether it's exploration in the deep ocean. Because the thing is, we need to understand the oceans before we destroy the oceans. And right now we're busy destroying the oceans, just, you know, harvesting everything from them. We use the ocean as a major food source, and we also use it basically as a sewer to throw away all our waste and all the pollution that runs off from our industrial society. And the ocean is taking a severe beating right now, and we're going to find that it's not there for us. that the life in the ocean is not there for us the way we expect it to be. So I think these are important things to think about.